Pathmonk is the AI for website conversions. With increasing online competition, over 98% of website visitors don't convert. The ability to successfully show your value proposition and support visitors in the buying journey separates you from the competition online. Pathmonk qualifies and converts leads on your website by figuring out where they are in the buying journey and influencing them in key decision moments with relevant micro experiences like case studies, intro videos, and much more. Stay relevant to your visitors and increase conversion by 50% by adding Pathmonk to your website in seconds, letting the AI do all the work, and increase conversions by 50% while you keep doing marketing as usual. Check us out on pathmonk.com. All right, everyone, welcome to today's episode of Pathmonk Presents. Today, we are joined by Matt Yao. He's the marketing manager at CultureSuite. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for inviting me on.
Of course, of course. So let's get to the basics for a second, Matt. I just want to talk about CultureSuite and maybe understand a little bit what's the big idea behind your company. We talked about the company itself a little bit offline, and you said it's quite niche. So if you were explaining it to to a friend over coffee, how would you describe what you do?
Well, I might be quite verbose here because there's some context I need to explain first, I feel, which should be helpful. So CultureSuite operates in the arts and culture sector, primarily targeting ticketed culture organizations. And many people will know this already, but the arts and culture sector is under attack a bit. And in recent years, we've seen governments around the world slash funding, or say that culture is a luxury for the elite, and generally undermine the value of arts and culture, and say that it has minimal economic value. And I won't go into politics of why all of this is not just wrong, but also dangerous to human existentialism. But at CultureSuite, we feel these challenges very deeply, and we worry, to be honest, or at least I worry about the sector. I work, because I access culture all the time, and I want to be able to continue to access that culture. And if we don't help fix these problems, it's entirely possible that arts and culture will one day genuinely be limited to only affluent and elite audiences only. You only have to look at the increase in festival and concert prices to see how they're completely out of touch with the cost of living crisis. So one of the big challenges in the sector is definitely the economic landscape. As I mentioned, funding has consistently been cut over the past decade. And CultureSuite is tackling this by making digital more sustainable for arts and culture organizations. But before I go into that as well, there's yet more context that isn't just about the external economic challenges that adds pressure to the sector, but we've also noticed some ways of working within the sector that we felt needed to be addressed and updated. So CultureSuite was born out of a merger between two web agencies in arts and culture. Previously, it was Peppered based in Rotterdam, and After Digital based in Glasgow. So they were two agencies that were building websites for arts venues. But over time, we recognized a common problem. Venues were spending large sums every few years on complete website rebuilds, which simply isn't sustainable in a sector where funding is being cut and where they have economic pressures. And as web development agencies, we were also spending large sums rebuilding the same web components for each project due to differing tech stacks. So we might be building a ticketing integration on WordPress, and then someone changes tech stack to Drupal or Ghost, and we're having to rebuild that integration again on a different tech stack. So that was very costly. And that cost gets passed on. So all of this builds up a kind of financial pressure in the sector. And we noticed that arts and culture organizations don't do this when it comes to other technologies, such as their ticketing system. They don't rebuild their ticketing system every time. So we asked the question, why should each website be painstakingly built from scratch every time as well? So to solve this, we created an all-in-one digital platform called Peppered. So we use that old agency name from the Rotterdam-based agency. So our platform is called Peppered. And it's specifically designed for arts, culture, and entertainment venues. And it comes with everything these organizations need right out of the box, from integration with ticketing systems, flexible content blocks, personalization tools, accessibility compliance. All of that is available through a subscription rather than a upfront cost. So previously, arts and culture venues, or they still do, use generic CMSs like WordPress, and they will reconfigure them to fit their unique needs. And not only is this expensive, but it's also an under-optimized system.
Hmm.
But what makes us truly different is our community approach. So venues have a direct influence over our development roadmap. When one venue suggests a feature improvement on Peppered and we build it into the platform, all other Peppered-powered websites can then use that feature at no additional cost. So we don't kind of hide it behind a paywall or anything like that. And this creates a kind of virtuous cycle where collective knowledge grows with each adoption and strengthens the entire cultural ecosystem. And there's a recent example of this from National Opera and Ballet in Amsterdam. So they discovered that ticket buyers would often buy 4 tickets. It would be one ticket buyer buying 4 tickets, and they'll share the other 3 with their mates or family. So in effect, they didn't know anything about up to 75% of their audience, which, as we all know in marketing, is kind of makes our job difficult. It makes audience development difficult. They only know 25% of their audience. So they came to us with this problem, and we collaborated in workshops to develop a ticket sharing solution for Peppered. And by baking this solution into the system, arts marketers at National Opera and Ballet can now reach those audiences because they can track who those audiences are being shared to by using the ticket sharing system in Peppered. And ticket sharing isn't like a brand new innovative idea. Other ticketing platforms do it too. But what it shows is how venues have direct control over the future of the Pepper platform, how it looks, how it performs, and can come to us with their problems, and we can improve it together as a community. And yeah, as I said, none of this is locked behind a paywall. Once it's released, it's available to all of our venues. And we have loads of examples like this over the years. And this is just one of the ways that we're democratizing technology in arts and culture.
That's pretty cool. I mean, in a way, the way I understand it, right, is to make it more accessible for these organizations to be able to, well, promote themselves, promote the events they run, and promote culture, right, at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. So a part
right.
of it is, and I'll go into this a bit, a part of it is the kind of sustainability of the funding model, which I'll explain a bit. But the other part is about making their work and life easier by making website management easier, making event promotion easier, and all of that stuff.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I'm curious, how much of a role does your website play in pulling in those organizations, if that makes sense? So, and I guess in a way, if you could tell us a little bit about what you learned in terms of um, anything that really works when it comes to your website and the website of your clients, even, and anything you got your eye on improving, and you can see that's generally can be improved across these. Again, we start from your website, but it could be about your customers' websites too.
Yeah. To be honest, the website actually doesn't play a particularly big role certainly in attracting prospects, especially compared to other channels. So, the arts and culture sector is quite traditional in a way, I found, and word of mouth seems to be one of the most reliable and biggest channels in the sector. Often venues are asking their peers, asking their local venues who they should be using in terms of suppliers. So in a way, in terms of attracting prospects, the website doesn't play a massive role. Our SEO does perform, but again, it's not like the biggest way of attracting venues and prospects. And this is largely due to the long sales cycles. As I alluded to, venues are typically looking to renew their websites on a 3 to 5 year cycle because that's when their contracts will renew with their agencies. But the website does play a key role in converting prospects. After all, it delivers all of our key messaging, has all our case studies, it promotes our events and webinars and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
And at the moment, I would say the main weaknesses of our website is a kind of lack of human touch and a lack of video demos. So one thing we hate is, even though what we do is provide digital technology, we hate being seen as a tech company. I guess if you wanted to put a label on us, that is what we are, but it's not really what we're about. and it's not really what the platform's about. The tech is just merely a tool to do what venues need to do. What we care more about is the people within these organizations, and the community of venues that we work with who provide us information, data to improve the platform. So really, we are largely, we say that we're a kind of passionate collective of kind of thinkers and arts and culture enthusiasts, and that's because largely a lot of people, or if not everyone within our business, spends a large portion of their spare time thinking about the problems the sector faces because we use it on a very regular basis. So those are two of the kind of biggest weaknesses we have on the website that we're looking to address soon. In terms of strengths, I would say right now, one of our biggest strengths is the content we produce and publish. So that's the copywriting and the key messaging on the website. Because one thing I've noticed in the B2B space in arts and culture, and to be honest, I think many businesses still make this mistake, is that they spend too much time speaking about themselves. So I still see far too much kind of I, we, us language in copywriting too much. And it's just like it's just like who really cares, to be honest, because there's such a kind of so much noise out there, that kind of language I find just doesn't resonate. And there's a great book called Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit by Stephen Pressfield. And it's largely a book for copywriters, but I would say it's not just for copywriters, it's for anyone who needs to reach prospects, because it's about that idea of like, no one really, until you've made that connection with someone, no one really cares about your story or what you have to say. And this is why this kind of I, we, us language I find never really works. And you probably had this in a situation in a friend group when you're having a conversation and someone rattles off some like random irrelevant story, and someone else is just like, yeah, cool story, sarcastically. And that's what businesses are doing all the time when they talk about themselves too much. So yeah, so one of the things that we do is, and what I think all marketers should do, is put your audiences at the center of your kind of story, your focus, and their problems at the center, about making those connections. I think there's a slightly uncomfortable truth, and not everyone will agree with this, but there's a slightly uncomfortable truth that many of us don't want to believe, and that's we're all kind of like meaningless beings meandering through this world trying to make sense of it. Yet we all want to be heard, and we all want to feel like we add value, and businesses are the worst offenders of this. And everyone thinks that their own product is the next best thing, and everyone should be paying attention to us, and that we're going to solve the world's problems and all of that stuff. But really, most of the time it's not even kind of close to that. And I get it, people are trying to do their jobs, they're trying to promote a product. But really what people are looking to do is they're trying to make meaningful connections, right? And how do we do that? And the answer most people will come to is with empathy. And this is, what, as your answer kind of suggests, it's about understanding what people's problems actually are and speaking to those problems in a tangible way, and saying we do this or I solve that is generally a pretty ineffective way of communicating that, especially in earlier touch points. When people are later in the funnel, certainly in like sales conversations, you can start being a bit more specific about what it is that you do as an organization.
Of course.
It's very much about placing prospects at the center of your conversation, making their problems your focus.
It's about them, right? It's not about you. Right? I mean, it's about you when you say it, right? It's about you, the person reading. But I kind of get, first of all, I love the mention of Pressfield's work. I love his work, generally speaking. The World of Art, I mean, it's just a great book. But the meaningful connections that you mentioned, it's actually something that stood out to me. And I wanted to keep it on that line, if you don't mind. Just to switch gears for a second and talk about you as a leader, Matt. What are the kind of things that you do on a typical workday? The main things you focus on. If you could share that with us, so you can get an idea of how you interact with these organizations and what kind of work you do, really.
Well, I think a lot of people will probably relate. So we're a very small marketing team of two. And that's within a growth team, which includes a marketing team of two and a growth team, which kind of includes sales members in that, and that's five of us in total. So really, I'm dabbling in everything. Ideally, I'd like to focus more on strategy and seeking opportunities because I kind of find that side of things more enjoyable. I certainly enjoy strategy, more enjoyable. But right now, I'm also executing much of our content strategy, building relationships, forming partnerships, producing podcasts, organizing webinars, all of that stuff. So I don't know if you've seen that meme of a baby in an octopus outfit with kind of arms touching all sorts of marketing operations. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I feel like right now. So it's fun because there's a lot of variety. But yeah, maybe it's something and this is something that I think a lot of marketers will relate to is you can there's so much to do in marketing and there's you can feel like you're just executing and delivering constantly. And one thing I always try to say to myself is at least once a quarter, preferably I'd like to do it more, is to just block out some time to just do some strategy, do some thinking. It's most of the time
Mm,
you think you need to like hit all these deadlines, but most of the time it can be paused for a week for you to just have a think.
yeah.
So that's something that I tried to do as well.
That's a good point. It's funny you mentioned that meme because as soon as you mentioned meme, I thought about the one, with the dog sitting in the house burning, that the
Yeah,
house is on fire, and he said, I'm fine.
it's
And it's
fine.
it's fine. That's the one. Yeah. I mean, that's a funny one. It also kind of relates, I think, to the job of marketer, especially a solo marketer or small team, because you wear so many hats and then you have to put out so many fires, right? So, yeah, totally relatable. 100%. So, Matt, we're coming towards the end of the episode here. So, I would love us to jump into our rapid fire question segment. And it's just a quick one. We would like to keep it engaging, but really the idea is that for a concise question, we expect a concise answer. Is that fair?
I can try.
All
I can
right.
try my best.
All right,
Yes,
let's do it.
I
Let's
know
do
I
it.
can be a
Okay.
bit verbose, but yes.
Okay, that's cool. No worries. So, do you prefer watching or reading?
Reading.
Reading. Okay. What's the latest book you picked up, and were there any gems that really stuck with you?
The latest book may not be that relevant to marketers. So I got into climbing really recently, or bouldering specifically, and the most recent book I read is called Moving the Needle by Dave McLeod. And there's a sort of biography by a Scottish rock climber and some of the crazy adventures he's been on. And I do think non-climbers could enjoy it, partly
Hmm.
because Dave is a really thoughtful writer with a style that's quite unique. So I think writers could learn a bit from his writing. But also, he talked a lot about mental health, or at least mental capacity, and how he's grappled with mental blocks. And I think that's something that a lot of people can learn from in his most recent book, Moving the Needle.
100%. And look, we're not the types that we expect anyone to read any kind of book and then come out with, here's what I learned about my business by reading this completely unrelated book. So
Yeah.
it's fine, as long as there's variety there, we like a reading list. So keep on coming. Cool. So thanks for that. So if you had a magic one, Matt, that you could, use to fix any frustrating thing in your marketing life with tech, what would it be?
Uh, Probably make it easier to produce content. Um, Yeah, I think most people are probably familiar with the idea of reusing and repurposing content for all the various channels that they market to. And I just wish it was easier to do that basically. Right now, there's still a bit too much kind of copy and pasting and reworking content to work in video format and work in audio format and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, I think AI can get there. I just need to work on a prompt to help do that, to help rework some of that content. I mean, I think everyone does it a bit, but yeah, I wanted to just like do it a bit quicker and more easily would be good.
Yeah, I'm sure we have tons of marketers here that can relate. Okay, so maybe this one is related. Maybe it's a similar topic in a way, but what's one repetitive task that you love to put on autopilot forever?
Um, It probably was that really. I mean, I think the
Hmm.
other one would probably be revolved around analytics. Um, I'm not someone who massively likes diving into I like doing the research of analytics. I don't like to spend, I mean, I don't like to dive into the weeds of it too much. I'm more interested in the output of the analytics, getting the findings is great, but sometimes I just wish it would just pull my reports kind of together and disseminate a nice summary for me. So probably something
All
around
right.
analytics because there's a lot of repetitive tasks there for sure.
Yeah, you'll probably have a lot of vendors in your inbox right now, just as they hear
Yeah.
this. All right, Matt. Thanks a lot for being on the show with us today. And I want to give you the last word. So if someone forgets everything about the interview today, what is the one thing that they should remember about the work you guys are doing?
Um, I think the one thing to remember is that we're trying to deliver a sustainable solution for arts and culture. We're not that happy seeing people spend, up to six-figure sums on a 3 to 5 year basis for a website that doesn't include support or hosting or ongoing upgrades. And yeah, it's something that we find difficult to contend with because we think is potentially damaging to the future health of the sector.
And
So
so
yeah,
you're here to fix that.
yeah, that's what we're looking to address. Yeah.
Amazing. So if anyone wants to check out CultureSuite, where could they go?
CultureSuite.co is our website, so that's the best place to kind of dig around our website. As I said, we do all sorts of resources as well that might be useful to other marketers. We also do events and webinars throughout the year as well, so definitely worth checking out the website.
Perfect. All right, Matt. As I said, was a pleasure having you on the show, and maybe we can do it anytime soon before the year ends. But yeah, it was lovely having you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.